Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers here in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing. They're an independent family business that concentrate mainly on academic and pretty high quality stuff at this sort of higher end of the academic market. I'm looking at the moment at one of the books they produced. They have a series of handbooks which bring together through the editors quite a lot of useful information for those doing research and for those who are generally interested in the particular area they've picked. The book I'm looking at this morning is the Handbook on the Law of Cultural Heritage and International Trade. It's this book here. It's a heavy book. It runs to something like 650 odd pages. That's the back of it there. You've got the spine there. As I say, it's edited by James A.R. Nafziger and Robert Kirkwood Paterson, and it's part of the Research Handbooks on Globalisation and the Law. As I've said, Edward Elgar, that's their logo, they produce a lot of these handbooks and they're extremely useful. Nafziger actually comes from University College of Law, USA. This is Willamette, and Paterson is Professor of the Faculty of Law at the University of British Columbia, UBC, in Canada. The book itself has got some very useful detail in the index. It's very much a very high standard book again, and then when you get into the book itself you can see how it's structured. I've got paragraph numbering on this occasion, but you've got a lot of subheads and a lot of very detailed footnotes, which I think are extremely helpful. There you've got there, that's chapter 17, dealing with Sweden, and again you've got the name of the person who's written the particular article. Then we get to the front of it, you've got the main front page there, and it also tells you about the research handbooks that they've produced, which I think is quite helpful. It's a contents page there. Then you've got the list of all the contributors, and there are a lot of them there and there, plus acknowledgements. It's always very difficult with these publications because there are just so many people who are involved in bringing this together. There's a preface there which is always worth reading, so if you're involved in this area of cultural heritage and international trade, it's certainly an area you want to look at, because we're looking at exports and controls and all the usual suspects that are there at the moment within both the political and the legal discussions that we have across both the EU and the world stage in addition. Now, Elizabeth and I have written a review of this book, and we've given it a title which is on the web and in the journals: A New and Important Compilation of Original Writings on Cultural Heritage Law. And this is what we say. This recent publication from Edward Elgar presents an excellent collection of highly detailed essays to conclude a project from the Committee of Cultural Heritage Law of the International Law Association. So it's got very much of the international feel, of course, about it. A team of no less than 26 authors from almost 20 different jurisdictions worldwide have contributed to this book. Almost literally, you're offered a world of insights into the complexities of the law of cultural heritage and international trade. And the learned editors, that's Professor Nafziger from the Willamette University of Law in Oregon and Professor Paterson from UBC in Vancouver, have produced an important research resource. Cultural heritage law, they say, is a young and exciting field of research and practice, which has evolved mainly in the last half century in largely response to the frequent and widespread looting and trafficking of valuable art, artifacts and other cultural material. So what we're looking at here is the two limbs, if you like. It's the issue of cultural heritage and what's being taken. A lot of that in Europe, and it's still continuing. I'm recording this in May 2014, and we're still looking at the looting that the Nazis disgracefully did at the end of World War II. So this matter won't go away, and we still need international agreement on how we're going to do things. So what we're talking about when we're looking at the cultural material that's been taken, and all the problems, the focus, the authors say, is not merely on the ownership, that we would say in law the title. Remember, title is very important as a legal concept, saying contract or whatever it might be. The emphasis here is much wider in that the book examines domestic, regional and international law that encompasses property issues that pertain to absolutely anything of value, whether on land, underground, underwater, or even in outer space. And that's going to come, I'm sure, by the middle of this century and beyond. That will certainly come. And we have to think about what we're going to do again at that time. With all this in mind, the editor's explanatory introduction to the concept of cultural heritage law is especially well worth reading. Here, the term cultural heritage is closely defined. An important distinction is drawn between property, which connotes ownership and its related rights, and heritage, which doesn't, or doesn't necessarily. The term cultural does have various connotations, and we can think of many even in London, which is a very diverse community with different cultures and all sorts of excuses about what they might be getting up to. However, when we're looking at the term culture, as I say, it has the various connotations, but in general it refers to, quote, the myriad manifestations of culture that human beings have inherited from their forebears. So I think we've got that right. I hope we have in London anyway, because there are issues there very much connected with what is maybe cultural, but it's also probably a criminal offence. So we've got to look at it from a very careful perspective, because again, a lot of emotion comes into this. Numerous problems relating to heritage, which are virtually insoluble, have emerged very recently, as I've indicated earlier, in the wake of war, conflict and revolution, from stolen art hoarded by the Nazis to the nationalisation of private property during the Soviet Union, and much, much more besides. You've also got all sorts of things, like how much stuff have the Russians got in the Hermitage and all sorts of other little things. So again, one's got to be extremely careful because it's international, you've got to be diplomatic, but they're looking very much at where we are today and where we're going. The subject matter of the book is consequently very wide-ranging, as you'll see. We'll have another look at it in a minute. Fundamentally, it pivots around the topic of international trade, with emphasis on a number of key legal instruments that are used. That includes GATT, that's the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and the 1970 UNESCO Convention, which has established procedures for registering culturally important objects and archives. I think that's a very good step forward, because that means you can start cataloguing and you can follow the trail of where a piece or whatever it is you're looking for, where it's gone. Tracing, in other words, we may use in, say, the law of equity, but it's certainly there. Overall, the articles generally tend to emphasise the cultural heritage of humankind in general, rather than, in many cases, specific territorial claims. And of course that's where the problems are, because it's rather like what I said earlier about it, we can call it ownership, but it's title, because it's always going to be the issue of who has the better title to a particular piece of goods or whatever it might be. Of course that's also including intellectual property, but we're not going down that road today. Let me conclude by saying, because I find this a very enthusiastic subject, as you gather, that with its copious footnoting and extensive index, the book emerges as an important, readable and authoritative work of reference for researchers and practitioners involved in this growing and often sensitive and controversial area of law. If you're a comparative lawyer or involved in global business, you need this book in our view. And the publication date is given at 2014, and I've recorded this in the middle of May 2014. There's the book again. The back of it there, you can see. You've got some quite interesting points. I've got the middle of it open there. Again, you can see what it is. As I said, it's a heavy book, runs to 650 pages. I'm very pleased with it. I rather like the cover as well. You see how actually quite small we are as a world. But I think they've done an excellent job here, and I'd like to thank them all very much indeed. It's these books that we need. They give us the law to a certain extent, by what they're actually writing. So they're very much persuasive precedents and influences on what we do. And without them, we would be a lot less well informed. And this particular area, I think, is an important one, because it gets to the roots of where we are, what we're doing, and what we're leaving when we go for the people coming after us. So thank you so much for producing it to all. Bye-bye.